So, Theo, you were born in Cyprus. Your parents then emigrated to the UK. You settled in Manchester and then London by the age of 9. Was politics discussed much around the kitchen table at home?
No, not at all. Don't forget, in those days, black and white TV was the order of the day. So you didn't have the exposure to politics as much as you've got now. And certainly the only radio I would listen to would, in those days, would be pirate radio. And strangely enough, they never talked about politics.
I can't
Um,
think why. Maybe they want to preserve their listeners. But what about Cypriot politics? Obviously, Cyprus was going through quite a tricky time at the time.
Again, no, absolutely not. We left Cyprus because my parents and their parents worked for the British bases. So when the UK do what they brilliantly do after they grant a country independence, kindly, anybody who worked for them who might be in some form of possible vindication or thank you, they gave them a blue passport. And that blue passport really was your raffle ticket for the future. And that raffle ticket for us was enabling us to leave Cyprus and settle in the UK.
So, what was your first political memory then, if it wasn't much of a thing around the house? When did you become aware of politics or politicians?
See, as a kid, you knew Harold Wilson obviously was a caricature and a character, but I had absolutely no interest in what he was doing or saying as a kid. Really, it's only when I started work that really politics started. I started being aware how politics affected and etched out your life. And of course, the biggest memory of all was the coming of power of one Margaret Thatcher. I mean, that was it. She was a rock goddess. She
Oh,
absolutely rocked all our worlds at that stage.
a
She
rock
started
goddess.
some. She was absolutely because, and but like the Big Bang. The Big Bang was something you thought David Bowie at the time might talk about, and it was absolute deregulation, the allowing of a social a movement between class tiers, the ability for everybody to own their home. All these things all of a sudden were interesting because she was offering people the ability to carve out their own future.
So you went through school and your teens in the 60s and the 70s. I believe you even got to running the school's tuck shop at the age of 15. Your entrepreneurial skills shone through.
Not only was I school tax, I was a right little socialist as well.
A right little
I
socialist.
was a member. Yes, I was a member of the student union, but not because I believed too much in what was happening outside my own little sphere of the school, but because it started giving you some control. So I joined a student union and was involved in that, and ran the school tuck shop and committee after committee. But the good news is it kept me totally out of the classroom.
Right, you suffer from dyslexia, I think. You didn't particularly enjoy schoolwork as it was.
I was horrendous. It was terrible, absolutely appalling. In those days, dyslexia wasn't really even recognised, so I was in the lowest form of absolutely in every subject. It was only really in my final year that just before my final year that one of the teachers that came in to cover for an absentee teacher in a rather unruly, incredibly unruly bottom of all the forms subject class, and started engaging everybody. And he managed to engage me, and we had a really good conversation. And he very quickly realised that there was probably something in here, and what was I doing in this form, and invited me back to his study for a chat, and called our house mistress in as well, and they managed to challenge me a little bit more by moving me up a set in practically everything, but actually understanding the difficulties I had and making sure the teachers that were in those sets took note of it and gave me that little bit of extra help.
How bad was your dyslexia? Could you not really spell? Could you not write?
I can't spell now. I am terrible. I'm appalling. I mean, the biggest thing that happened for me was technology. The minute technology came in, so I didn't have to spell, I could really flourish. Of course, just before that, I was able to have my own secretary or use of a secretary. But that was in itself marvelous. I found I could do so much more.
Mm.
So that numbers, I'm absolutely tip top with. I've always been good with numbers, but certainly as far as spelling. In fact, Mrs. P, who wasn't Mrs. P at the time,
Mrs. Paphitis, just in case listeners didn't get the Mrs. P.
we started dating, and she very quickly cottoned on because I'd asked her to fill things in, and she thought, hello. Anyway, I had to explain what the hell was going on. I didn't know what was going on. It was other than I can't spell. She bought me. She went into Ryman in Borough High Street and bought me a little pocket dictionary and wrote in the inside page. And I had that in my pocket every single day of my working career until I could move on, either with the assistance of others or technology would deal with it. I've still got it today.
Back to politics. You say Thatcher was your first sort of political induction, if you like, but you've also just confessed a wee bit of student politics, getting yourself involved in the student union at school, etc., but only to give you power and to line your pockets as a 15-year-old tuck shop manager.
Yes, I absolutely I'm not ashamed of it. I actually admit it. I could not go into classroom. I had to do something else.
Many people have used politics to get rich in the past as well, and in the future, I'm sure.
So it was really to keep me. It just suited to keep me out of class. I could make money from it and keep out of trouble. And that was really why I was there. The minute I left school, politics went out the window. I mean, I've always had a soft spot for the underdog, the burning injustice, all those things. I've always been. I really have been a soft touch as far as that's concerned. And I can't bear to see injustice. It really does wind me up. So that was always there. But it wasn't political.
Do you remember who you first voted for? Who was your first vote?
So it would definitely, utterly been Callaghan.
Callaghan in 1979.
Yeah.
I think at the time you were a T-boy in a London insurance firm.
Correct. And that would have been my inner feelings, not from knowledge.
And so then you made some money in the 80s. I think your big break was buying a telecoms company when you spotted quite early the rise of mobile phones. You then had quite a, dare I say, a pretty classic Thatcherist 1980s. You became a retail entrepreneur. You bought up a whole load of retail companies, obviously in the world of tech already. I mean, it's a classic Thatcherite success story, isn't it? Did it make you a Thatcherite?
It definitely. As I said to you, I didn't. I'm pretty certain I did not vote for her. My inner feelings and would have been very much veering and nudging towards being more left than right. But certainly, as I got on in life and actually saw more of her, then I very much became a fan.
So as you went along buying up companies and your retail empire expanded, presumably you would have come into contact with senior politicians along the way. What did you think of them? Did you like them? Do you like them as a breed of person to hang around with, to have dinner with?
Do you know, I've really always enjoyed meeting politicians before they're politicians or in power and after they've left politics or left power, because they're much nicer people then.
And when they're in power?
They change. There's definitely, once they get involved in the political manifestations of Westminster, they seem to change. It's the honesty does disappear.
Have you had personal experience of that?
I've never really wanted anything from a politician. I've never asked for anything from a politician. I've never been denied a request or help from a politician because I've never asked for it. what I've found is that people definitely change. What you thought of them beforehand or was very different. And when you meet people after they leave politics, you think, well, I had that person absolutely wrong. The public understanding of that person I had was wrong because they're actually quite a nice person. But I'm sure they weren't when they were in politics.
Who are you thinking about in particular here? Feels like that you're imagining someone.
No, I'm not imagining anyone. Listen, I wouldn't want to be a politician today. That's for certain. Incredibly, under the present circumstances, it's an incredibly difficult situation. But if we go back just 2 or 3 years, let's go from the referendum. The divisive way that our politics has gone is actually not very nice at all. If you're after truth and you're after honesty, we are so far away from it at the moment, in not just in any particular one party, in the way politics has gone.
The culture.
Which I think is a shame. There was a time where you'd see politicians who were from the opposite side of any argument or party and would have quite a bitter or passionate exchange, but would do it very politely. Now it's got quite vicious, divisive, not very nice.
You then, in the 90s, ended up buying Millwall Football Club. You took it out of administration, and then I think you took the club to an FA Cup final. In fact, didn't quite win. Yeah. But Millwall's obviously got
only by 3 goals.
Millwall's got a troubled history with fan behaviour, and you spent quite a lot of time on that, trying to stop that and control that. Did that put you into contact with politicians at the time?
You mean local politicians? Simon Hughes was our local MP at the time, and he used to come to games, and he was a decent chap. Wouldn't be. I spent more time talking to commissioners of police, to be perfectly honest.
The Sunday Times rich list have you down, I'm sorry if this embarrasses you, as being worth £290 million. Now, I'm sure you wouldn't disagree with that sum, unless it's, of course, that they've undervalued you. Does that bring you the attention of politicians, whether they like money for donations or your celebrity after, obviously, Dragon's Den makes them of use to you, or you of use to them, rather?
Tom, I'll probably scare politicians. I don't think I'll be very politically reliable from their perspective. I have my views. I have my honest views that I've got convictions in, and it's actually quite easy to have, convictions in things that you believe in. For me, if I agree with a politician, I will agree with a politician. If I disagree, I will disagree. I have no reason to do anything but.
So look, we're in the 90s now. Are you still voting? You obviously voted for Thatcher throughout the 80s, I imagine. Then maybe you voted for John Major. What did you do in 1997 when there was obviously Major versus Blair?
I think I did exactly the same again.
John Major?
Yeah.
Didn't like look at Tony Blair?
No, I wasn't sure about him. I really wasn't sure about him. Although I think he did a great job.
Did you switch your vote to him at some stage?
I did, yes.
Well, let's talk about the Brexit referendum, because that is definitely one time where you did take a bit of a public stage, didn't you? You publicly advocated support for Brexit, for us leaving the EU. I think you described the EU as a failed experiment. Why did you believe that, and why did you decide to take a public stage with your views?
Well, when we joined the EU, we joined it as an economic union. It was a trading club, and that made a huge amount of sense and still does. But it got more and more towards a political and monetary union. And it's very clear to me that the federal states of Europe is and has been the goal for a long time. And I actually don't agree with that. I think every country has its right to be its own sovereign state. We can't all be the same. We have heritage to contend with, and heritage that we also want to preserve in some cases. But to take everybody and make them into a vanilla European, this just doesn't sit right with me.
So it was the monetary union that started to concern you?
I think the monetary union it has to be a political union. I don't know how you can have a monetary union without a political union.
You didn't want that for Britain?
No.
Did you get any grief for going public with your views, or did you find you had even more fans?
I think it was an incredibly passionate debate, wasn't it? And it got too passionate at one stage where I thought it was actually quite ugly and not nice. It didn't quite reach the entourage of Mr. Trump's activities. But there was moments of Trumpism in there. Don't you agree?
God, I was just a mere observer. What moments of Trumpism on whose side? Yeah, I was a journalist. Still am. But what do you mean by Trumpism? On both sides, or one side, or the divisiveness of it all?
No, in fairness, I think both sides had their moments. Both sides had their moments. So it became, politics became very nasty. And I appreciate people are passionate, and it's right to be passionate. It's good that we're passionate. But it became nasty. Some people would say some very, very horrible, nasty things. But when you confronted the vast majority of them that did say, that they really didn't know why they were saying it. I don't mind having a debate or an argument with somebody from who's got a totally opposite view to my own. But then that's a debate. You can have that debate. But it actually got quite silly. And people were just saying things for the sake of it. It became jingoistic in some cases. It did get very, very silly. In some ways, we possibly forgot the reason it all kicked off, which was this ever-growing club that we didn't sign up for. The EU itself, I just don't see how it's going to survive anyway in its present format. But hopefully, us leaving will wake them up.
Did you have second doubts, though? Because you went on Question Time in the absolute depths of the parliamentary battles over Brexit after Boris Johnson took over as Prime Minister in October last year, and said you'd actually decided you'd back a second referendum.
No, I didn't say, it's a second. What I said was I didn't mind a second referendum, right? If that would stop the disharmony and the
mess
problem which was happening within the country, because we had the whole of Parliament was paralysed. Let's be honest, Westminster didn't cover itself in glory, did it?
Not greatly.
The whole thing was paralysed. So it didn't bother me if we had a second referendum, if that was going to be it.
And instead, there was a general election. So we're coming right up to date now. Let me ask you how you voted in the 2019 December general election.
You can.
And I just did.
And I'm not going to tell you.
I think you voted for Boris Johnson because you wanted to see Brexit done.
Do you?
Yeah. This is one of those pregnant silences you're supposed to fill by confessing.
That sounds like the man from the Sun newspaper.
Times Radio.
No, I'm not going to tell you.
Okay.
We'll save that for another day.
That's interesting.
We'll save that for another day.
Your discretion is interesting, and perhaps tells its own story. You probably wouldn't describe yourself at the same time as woke, though?
Or how would you define woke?
Politically correct, right on, that kind of thing.
I don't know who's right and who's not. Your definition of woke might be different than somebody else's definition of woke, and my definition of woke.
But the subject doesn't get you particularly hot under the collar?
Not at all.
Okay.
We're in a modern world that's changing on a very fast pace and on a regular basis. Things that were appropriate or accepted in previous years now we feel are not right, and in the vast majority of cases correct.
Probably no bad thing.
And we've moved on. We've moved on. We've educated ourselves better. We understand better now than we did before. That doesn't make the people of the past bad people, does it?
No, I don't think it does. Some would argue that it does because they want their statues taken down and the like. But
it was of the time. It was of the period. This is what people knew at the time. Listen, we've been buying cars and gas guzzling cars, destroying the environment quite happily and merrily in my lifetime and your lifetime. How will we be judged in the future? Was that big sin by us? It's obviously not great for the environment, and of course we've woken up to it. But we did it quite willingly and very happily. Do you remember getting your first car?
Oh, I cherish the moment. It fell to pieces on day 2, but I loved it when I had it.
Yeah. So really, things change, and it's right that things change, and it's right that we are better educated, more understanding than we were previously. And I'm sure the next generation will be too, and even more so.
Okay, Theo, I'm going to have to sum you up now, sum up your politics. We're coming towards the end. And you know,
That sounds painful. Had you done this beforehand?
Does a bit.
Did you do that?
No, I was about to tell you. So fascinating going into this with your CV, with your business career, how you made it all yourself the hard way through grit and a bit of entrepreneurship rather than any hand up. I was going to put you down as a Thatcherite before we started speaking, but I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to sum you up as, at a guess, as a free market, fairness-seeking, floating voter. How do you plead?
Oh, guilty, I think.
Good. Well, I got that right then.
I think that pretty well describes me. And, you know, I will not just stay with a party line if I actually disagree with it.
Theo Paphitis, has been fascinating talking to you. Thank you very much for sharing your personality politics.
Pleasure.